Dope. We are in here. Ah, I'm sorry. I always feel like super amazing whenever we can do this. And then I'm going to change this to where you guys see me. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for getting on. Whether you are with me on Zoom, whether you are on YouTube, whether you are on Facebook, whether you're watching it live, whether you're watching it later, no matter where it is, no matter where you are, I know I have quite a few people from everywhere who join these messages. I know it's been a while. I have taken some time to refresh and regroup, and it's been amazing. So I'm going to jump right into it because I have a lot of information and I don't want to be here with y'all on the stream all day and all night. Okay. I want you to take in the information. I want you to have a pen and paper out because there are going to be some nuggets that I know you're going to be able to apply to your life. I have already taken things from this and started writing out how I'm going to apply it to my life because teaching is always learning twice. And so today what we're going to talk about is really how identity can be obstructing your purpose, obstructing your vision, obstructing your goals, and keeping you from getting to the next level. And what's crazy is as soon as I posted this, people are like, are you talking about sexual identity? And I'm like, y'all, we are so obsessed with sex that everything comes down to that. No, we are talking about your personal identity, okay? And this is your personality, your achievements, your ethnicity, nationality, social status, social class, beliefs, values, culture, all the things that encompass what you may consider to be your personality. Or other key indicators of how you know we're talking about your personality is when you're confronted with certain things regarding your behavior or how you're conducting yourself or maybe needing to conduct yourself differently. You may say things like, well, I've always been this way. Or, people have, from my neighborhood or people where I'm from or from my culture or from my country, blah, 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 are doing this and or do things this way. And if you find yourself saying this consistently, that means that your destiny is calling you to transform yourself so you can go to a different place. And oftentimes when we feel like we've let ourselves down or we just feel stuck and obstructed is because there's just something and some parts of us that we refuse to let go of when really where we're going is going to be way better than where we are, where we've been, what have you, if you choose to make some changes there. And the reason I do this is because I have experienced personally, people getting coaching from me, from business owners to, spiritual figures, social figures, just different people who are looking to get to the next level. And by the time I'm done listening, what I realize is that they're having an identity crisis. And that is when their identity and how they see themselves is conflicting with where they want to go and who they want to become. And what this does is it creates blockages, okay? Now, the real problem with this, with personal identity, is that most times, not all the time, because there are parts of our identity that is just amazing, right? And things that we've worked on and we've travailed through that's just really taken us to where we are today, right? But the problem with a lot of our identity is that it's not really the real us. It is who we've become. It is who people tell us we should be and what's acceptable. It reflects our social class, how we grew up, and it's just a lot of environmental factors, right? And so one of the things that that could have molded your identity is maybe some internal conflict you've had. Sometimes it's unaddressed pain, suffering, or conflict. Sometimes when I meet people that seem like they're constantly having conflict with others, I realize that oftentimes they're dealing with a lot of internal conflict. Sometimes it's social pressures. Maybe you've suffered through something and there's part of you that says, look, I don't want to suffer through that again. sometimes it's rewarded behavior that stems from poor leadership, meaning you may have had a parent or someone that was like a voice of leadership, in your life that rewarded bad behavior. And this bad behavior has now been a part of your identity. Just like if you reward a child with something that maybe they shouldn't be rewarded with, but it teaches them, hey, when I do this, good things still happen or happen to those who do this. And it becomes a part of their identity. Sometimes it's from fear of abandonment. You may fear losing certain social circles, from being a divergent thinker, or it may be, hey, this person's really important to me and they're in my life. And maybe who I really am, they're not going to like. So what I've done is conform to this false identity. And oftentimes it's just modeled behavior of others, meaning, you've had some lack of exposure. And the reason this is important is because a lot of our identity is very pliable, okay? And a lot of it has been based on temporary factors. So let's start off with what makes a person. So a person is made up of three things, okay? And actually there's a lot of things in there, but we're gonna break them down into three basic things. The first thing is their body. Then we go into their soul, then their spirit. Now the body is all the external factors, okay? And this is what we see on the outside. And this is actually the most temporary, okay? Our bodies have not stopped changing since we were born. They will continue to change until we die. And it changes so quickly, in fact, that there's billion-dollar industries that have been created trying to stop this process, okay? But one thing's for sure, the body and the aging process is undefeated. No one dies looking the way that they started. And so you could think of someone as, and their external, their body, their flesh, as like their hair, their weight, their skin, their clothing. And I'm going to go as further as to saying, their status symbols, right? Meaning the house, they live in, the car they drive, the neighborhood they're from, things of that nature. All those things are very temporary. But how often do we see people identify themselves by those things? And it could go as simple as like, oh, I identify as a big man or woman. Well, guess what? What if you're not big tomorrow? You know what I'm saying? Something could happen that could cause you to lose 50 to 100 pounds. I hope that doesn't happen all of a sudden, because usually it's based on illness or something like that. But it could be something like that, or the opposite. I'm sure we've all seen people who are like, is that sense? Right? And they look like a completely different person, different weight, different everything. And think of how often we create an identity, around our bodies, around where we live, around our cars and things like that. And it's so insidious because it's constantly changing. It's impermanent, it's shallow, and it really doesn't reflect a whole person. And what we end up doing is we invest a lot of time and effort and energy trying to conform or allowing our identity to cling to external factors. And I've seen it so many times. It could be maybe people where I'm from drive this type of car. And you've created an identity around, status symbols. And you are going after at full speed, with all your power and might, trying to obtain all of these different status symbols, right? But maybe the real you doesn't care about that. Maybe the real you just wants to build houses for those who are experiencing abject poverty. Maybe that's the real you. But as long as you cling to this identity that's based on external factors, you're going to find yourself being in a place that doesn't reflect where you truly want to be, which creates anxiety, depression, unhappiness, all of these different things. So that's the easiest one to recognize. And really, just take some time to write down, are there external factors that I have made a part of my identity? Is it my weight, hair, skin, nails, house, neighborhood, with all of those things, right? So the next thing is the soul. Now, this is the personality of a person, okay? And I had someone, I was actually in Brian Meadows' church, and he was talking about this, and I was like, oh, this is the smartest way of explaining this. But it's basically the personality of a person. And this is something that you're generally born into. Now, there's a couple of different ways to think about this. One, genetically. We know now that, based on different traumas and experiences, they leave genetic markers on the DNA. Now, that DNA is activated based upon your thoughts and your experiences. So just because the past generation had that trauma, it only activates and triggers in you once you align yourself with the trauma and the thoughts and the experiences and the activities that are consistent with that trauma. So it could be generational trauma, and it could be for great things too, right? But there's also the side of your personality or your soul that is connected to your surroundings, meaning you've gotten feedback from your surroundings, okay? It could be, safety. Some people tell me that I'm crazy and that I always think that everything's just going to be fine. I'm like, surely that person wouldn't rob me, right? But I can say that I've lived a generally very, very safe life, okay? And so parts of my personality reflect that. The second part to it could be from a place of lack, and maybe parts of your personality has been shaped by lack. Some of us are like, I'm a hoarder, I have to keep everything. Well, where have you experienced lack? Or how are you experiencing lack, and how is hoarding fulfilling that? And most importantly, how is that obstructing the goals that you're looking to achieve? But also something that can really reflect in one's soul, one's personality, is also abundance. Whereas poverty, you have a fear that comes from a lack of resources. Sometimes coming from abundance can create a fear of lack of ability, because we often gain confidence from overcoming obstacles. And when you overcome an obstacle, it makes you feel like, I'm the Superman or Superwoman of this situation. This is what I achieved. I started from the bottom, now I'm here. But what happens when you come from abundance? That can leave a huge gap, and I've seen it over and over and over again. It can leave a huge gap in your confidence. And sometimes you may see these individuals overcompensating, and you may see them have, inflated egos, all of these different things. And it really comes from a fear of a lack of ability. There's no other way of doing it, right? Maybe your personality has been shaped based on subcultural or countercultural influences. Subcultural is like, hey, this is the norm where I'm from, and so I've kind of just meshed into that, right? Or maybe it could be countercultural influences, to where it's like, look, everyone else does this, and I'm going to do the exact opposite. Like, I'm going to rebel, and maybe rebelling against that has become a part of your personality and a part of your identity. But what if rebellion isn't something that is consistent and is supporting your destiny and supporting your goals and supporting your vision? Okay. Now, let's say you don't know what your vision is. I do have a course that can help you figure that out. Okay. But the goal is for you to be driven by your vision, your destiny, your purpose, and what that requires. And all of that should be informing your personality. Sometimes it could be from your cultures, right? And let me show you how temporary culture really is, okay? I could be myself, and I am myself. But if I were born, raised, and bred in Japan, guess what I am? I am Japanese. Doesn't matter if my family is from Louisiana or Kentucky and they eat collard greens and crawfish etouffee. If I was born, bred, raised in Japan, that's probably not going to be my food of preference. I am going to speak Japanese. I am going to walk like a Japanese. I will speak like the Japanese. I won't be as loud as I am and all of these different things. And that shows you how temporary culture is. And we think that it's built in our DNA, but it's really an environmental factor. And if you think that's not true, go someplace that's your place of origin and you didn't grow up there, and I promise you they can point it out within 5 seconds that you had not been there your whole life. We can even talk about your likes and dislikes. Like, I don't like unsweet tea, period. Yeah, I said it. I don't like unsweet tea. I will never like unsweet tea. Now, is it because of I just have a certain inclination? No, it's because I'm from the South. We drink sweet tea here. So what I grew up drinking or what have you. Now, I promise you, if I did move somewhere and I had a lot of unsweet tea and, I'm sure that I can learn how to like it, but my enjoyment of sweet tea comes from the fact that I grew up in an environment where everything had 2 pounds of sugar in it. All right. It can impact your desires. Do you want what you want because you want it, or because the people around you says, hey, everyone in our family becomes a doctor, period? It will impact in your motivations. And these are just the desires that drive you, right? And that is something that is extremely environmental. And you can tell that it's environmental because when you're in specific environments or families and someone has different motives, it sets off an alarm. Like, hold on, what? You want to do what? Join the Peace Corps, excuse me? And it could be something really great, right? You know what I'm saying? But it's just like, let's say you come from a family where everyone's supposed to be a CEO, a millionaire, whatever. And you say, guess what I'm doing? I am joining the Peace Corps. You mean for free? You're gonna work for free? What? And that's how you know that a lot of our motivations have been driven externally. Could be your values, and a lot of our values are great, right? But some of them are values that we inherited from our family. And it doesn't mean that they were bad, but we inherited them from them, and they were based on rules and regulations that they needed to have to survive. One example from my family, I remember my dad always talking to me about not taking risk. Like, no, that's too big of a risk. Don't do it. Don't take risks. Don't take risks. Don't take risks. And I understand why, knowing how he grew up, where he grew up, and the things that defined him. He was in the military, he fought in several different wars and things like that. And taking risk can literally cost you your life. That's not my reality, right? And even certain things too, as far as your personality, have been influenced by your outside experiences. Some of you guys are introverts, you're extroverts, you're patient, or, I've always lacked patience. I've never had patience. That's just not who I am. So you may be timid, you may be confrontational. And here's a couple of things that was influenced by. Let's talk about the first one, your family role. Some of you are firstborns, okay? And you're used to being in control. You're the mom and dads of a family, or the third and fourth mom and dad in the family. You practically was a big part in raising your siblings. And you were just the person that had all the responsibility. You had to keep everyone in line underneath you and all of these different things, right? And I'm familiar with it. My husband's a firstborn, so I get it. And he still keeps up with the family, still takes care of his siblings, checks in on them, doing that. And that's just a part of who he is. because of the family role that he had, right? Some of you are the middle children. And I love middle children. You guys have learned how to define yourself. You've learned how to find your own lane. You become independent. You learn how to get in where you fit in and just let the car keep rolling. You know, some of you guys were somewhat of the forgotten child or children or what have you, you know. And then you have the last borns. Lord help us with all the last borns, okay? all the last born children, y'all were the super loved. Y'all had different rules. Maybe you're used to people bending the rules for you. You know, maybe your parents were tired by the time they had you and all that stuff, right? Or if you're like me, you're the only born. And I used to use that as an excuse for everything. I'm an only child. I don't know how to share. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to, you know, be considerate. I don't know how to do this. I never had to do this, right? But it was just a part of who I was at that time. But often who we want to be is going to come into direct conflict with that, right? And then we have gender roles, you know, and some of you guys have embraced them. Some of you guys have rejected them. You know, social class, like people where I'm from do this, people where I'm from don't do that, you know, all of these different things. Or my favorite is those people, right? Well, when talking from one class to the other, those people do this, we don't, right? But you have to be very, very, very careful about looking at any of these things and using it as a reason to judge that person. Why? Well, one thing is every person is who they are because either A, life hasn't forced them to evolve or transform, or B, they just haven't learned yet, especially if they're things that you feel are negative, you know? And most of our experiences are limited to the social class in which we were born into. There used to be this cartoon with Andre 3000 back in the day, and I think it was like the class of 3000 or Andre the class of 3000, something like that, right? And it's all these kids growing up in Atlanta. And you have like the kid that it's almost like Andre 3000 when he was a kid. And then you have like the super rich kids, suburban kids, and they're all going to this school of performing arts. And I can't remember exactly what happened on the episode, but basically something happened. They were trying to get to like Six Flags or some sort of theme park, right? And they didn't have a ride to get there. So they ended up having to take the bus. And so the main character was like, yo, to the really rich guy, like, hey, do you have any change? And the little boy was like, what's change? Okay. Y'all, I have literally had these experiences with people to where because of the social class they were born into, there are just certain facts of life that they were completely unfamiliar with. Do you know that there are people who do not know that vegetables come in cans? Yes, it is possible to be that wealthy where you had no idea, okay, that vegetables and food can be purchased in a can. And sometimes we see these individuals and we immediately judge. They're stuck up, they're this, they're that, but legitimately, they just haven't been exposed to the other side of life. And then it happens from the other side. Sometimes we're like, that is so ghetto. This person is just so ghetto. When literally, that may be all that they know. We cannot judge them. The only thing we can do is contribute towards their experiences and contribute towards their exposure in a positive and meaningful way. And this kind of goes into perception. You know, your identity will also impact your perception. How you identify, you know, I'm from this neighborhood, I'm from that neighborhood, or whatever. And now it can help you to perceive you will develop preconceived notions about others and how they should be perceived, but it will also give you preconceived notions about how other people perceive you. Yes, sometimes your identity will make you feel self-conscious about something and make assumptions about how other people are receiving you and how they perceive you. And what that does is it keeps you from walking through doors and joining networks in which you should. Because you're like, you already have in your mind, these people don't accept people like me. They're going to be racist. They're going to be homophobic. They're going to be this. They're going to be that. They're going to be that. They're going to be that, this, and that. And next thing you know, there's a door that's open that you refuse to walk through. And maybe there's someone on the other side of that door that's connected to your destiny. But your identity isn't allowing you to walk through that door. Sometimes we forget about the reverse. We know about how it informs how we perceive others, but it also informs how we believe other people are perceiving us. And that's not always true. People will surprise you every day. I remember when in my 20s, I was in sales, doing door-to-door sales. We were in like someplace just in the middle of nowhere, South Georgia. And I was like, I'm not going to make any money. Everybody in this neighborhood is going to be racist. It's going to be crazy. Now, were there some racist people there? Absolutely. But I remember going and knocking on this one person's door and they were like, how do you here? And they're the nicest people ever. And I made more money there probably than any other places in my life. And that was my first lesson of sometimes we just perceive things the wrong way, and we assume people are going to perceive us in one way when they're not. We have to give each individual an opportunity. Sometimes your personal accomplishments can be a part of your identity. But what happens when you no longer feel accomplished? What happens when that is so much a part of your identity, but you walk in a room where people have accomplished so much more? Do you lose confidence? Do you become insecure in these areas? Or have you become so accomplished that you look down on conventional wisdom? And this happens all the time, where you have people paying like thousands of dollars, like, oh, science did this, blah, 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 woo, woo, woo. And then someone's like, drink some apple cider vinegar. And you're like, there's no way. And then you use the herb, you use the natural cure, you do all of those things, and it worked better than what anyone else could have prescribed you. So that's just one example of sometimes your personal accomplishments and have become a part of your identity, and it can still obstruct you from getting to the goal. Maybe the person who has the information that you need, doesn't fit in the same circle of accomplishment as you. Maybe they don't have a PhD, maybe they have a GED, and you've gone in, you've judged, and you look down on the person. And now you no longer have access to their gift because you don't respect them and you refuse to affirm them. So you can't let your personal accomplishments be a part of that. And that also varies. What's an accomplishment in one area is nothing to someone else. And all of these different things add up over time to becoming a part of your reputation, because you start acting and taking actions and projecting based on all of these fluid identities that have just become a part of you, right? Oh, I'm in shape, I'm this and that. And then what happens when you gain 50 pounds? You have 3 sets of twins, and all of and this also, your reputation can also become a part of your identity, because guess what? Maybe you want to change, but this is how people have always seen you. They've gotten used to this. You were always this person. Like recently, I have not really been drinking alcohol. You wouldn't believe the number of people that I meet that are like, oh, what? You did what? With who? You stopped? Excuse me? You know what I mean? And sometimes, people have seen us in a certain state for so long that we haven't mustered up the courage to veer away from that. Okay. And I'm challenging all of you guys to look at all of these different things, your social class, your culture, your body, your personality, and even if we go further into personality, maybe in your family, being outspoken was punished. Maybe in your family, it wasn't cool to be bookish, they wanted athletes and creative people, or vice versa. Maybe everyone in your family is an academic and you want to be a creative or an entertainment or an athlete or something like that. And it's frowned upon, and you just kind of change your identity, based upon what was comfortable for them. So these are all of the things that could be obstructing where we're looking to go. And the goal is to be driven by your spirit. That means the real you. And everywhere you're looking to go, every destiny, every vision, every goal, every next level, every future accomplishment, every destined relationship, what have you, is going to require the real you to accomplish the task. It's going to require the real you to take the ball across the finish line into touchdown, okay? Now, I can't tell you who you really are. I can tell you that. You have to dig deep. You got to pray, Lord, who am I? Whatever it is that you need to do. But I am going to encourage you to start the journey, and I'm going to give you a few nuggets that can help you, okay? The first thing I want you to know is the real you will always reflect your life's destiny and purpose, and it's always talking to you. Your natural inclinations, not the things that people force you to do. Maybe some of you guys were naturally inclined as a child to just go in the room and draw. No one told you to. Some of y'all got in trouble because you loved it so much. You drew on the walls, you drew on the table. If I go in my daughter's room right now, she has drawings everywhere, even in places she shouldn't, like on her table. Okay. But that's an example of a part of who she is that no one had to just force her to do. She just does it on her own. For instance, for me, writing is a big thing for me. And I used to always wonder why I'm always buying pens and paper and all this other stuff. And I've learned that my best ideas come when I'm writing, when I'm journaling, when I'm just freehanding things, right? Whether it's a script, whether it's a lesson, whether I'm trying to figure out the answer to a problem in life or a situation or strategize. And when I sit down and write everything out, the answer comes. That's something and a small tendency that has informed a part of my destiny and purpose and the best ways in which I operate. Another thing about the real you is the real you doesn't need a lot of external motivation, meaning someone doesn't have to force you into it. It's something that you just have a natural curiosity about. It's things that when you're not under pressure, you're not feeling anxious, you're not feeling judged or any of those things that you just want to do. Okay. And I don't mean anything like harmful passions like drugs. Like no one was born to be a drug addict. Okay. Or cheating or, anything like that. Okay. I mean, like the positive things, the positive passions. Like maybe you naturally want to help people, you naturally want to serve, you naturally want to help make people look more beautiful. I meet people that I'm like, oh, you're an esthetician. Like you are obsessed with good skin. They're up to me like, hey, what do you use here? They're not going to use that. They're just into that and they just love it and they crave it and they read every ingredient, these are all indicators. Okay. And the real you is normally experienced, right? Meaning this other person is experiencing this by those who you deeply trust. So if you're questioning who is the real me, the people that you just really deeply trust Who are you when you're around them? You know, like the real me is real goofy. My husband had a rude awakening, right? Like I want to play all the time, joke around, what have you. But if you meet me in like a business environment, depending on what's going on, you may not ever see that person. You know what I mean? But that is the real me. Okay. And this can become a problem. Especially when we don't trust ourselves enough to even show ourselves who the real us is, you know, like if you don't trust yourself, you may question the things that you really want to do and your tendencies. And you may say things. I remember there were times in my life where I'm like, why am I like this? You know, other people aren't like this. Other people don't, you know, aren't comfortable with spending hours and hours by themselves thinking and writing and doing all these things, right? And it's because at the time I didn't trust myself enough to embrace who the real me is. So just think about, you know, if you have some questions, think about some of your intimate relationships, you know, your husband, your wife, your best friend, your partners, you know, and people that you feel you trust enough to kind of let your guard down, and they can help. And just ask yourself, who am I when I'm with this person? You know, who am I when I'm around people that make me feel relaxed and welcome? And that informs the real you. And the key is to take that person into the other spaces of your life, and that will allow you to thrive. So that does not mean being, you know, over giving too much information to other people. It doesn't mean oversharing and, you know, emotionally vomiting on other people. No, that just means if you're a naturally, you know, quiet person, or maybe you're more artistic than what you let on, or maybe you're more compassionate and all of that stuff, you know, maybe take that in some of your other spaces where maybe you've learned to be more bossy, or you are a little bit quicker to lose your temper or things like that, right? And think about it like this. Many of us have been driven by external factors for so long that we just find it difficult to figure out who this person is. So let me tell you this, okay? First off, finding the real you is a lifelong journey. But that's great because it keeps your relationship spicy, even the relationship with yourself, meaning you will never, ever, ever get bored while you're on the journey of finding the real you. All right. Number two, the real you is motivated and purposeful. If you're doing something where you don't have any sense of motivation, you know, and you just feel like, why? Most likely you're not using the real you. You could even question, like, I don't know if this is right, but not if this is right. I don't know where this is going, but I have a strong desire to continue to pursue this career path, or to work in this company, or to explore, you know, this curricular, or to learn about this, right? Those are different ways that you can see who the real you is. Another thing, the real you gives you energy. Whenever you're operating in your true self, you don't feel emotionally exhausted by the end of the day. Why? It takes up a lot of energy, you know, to hold up airs, as they used to say. I think that's the same, to put on airs, right? To put on and act like you're something that you're really not. It takes a lot of emotional energy, and it will leave you feeling drained and tired. The real you gives you energy. The real you is passionate. The real you is kind and has a desire to give back. You know, the real you can work in a team, right? Some of us are like, I prefer to work by myself. No, you prefer to not have to resolve conflict. You never learned how to. And that's why you say you don't like to work in a team, because there's people around you that could potentially push your buttons and weigh in on your insecurities. And now you say, I just can't work in a team. Yes, you can. All right. The real you has a desire to give back. The real you isn't fearful of everything. The real you isn't anxious. Anxiety is a subset of worry, which is a subset of fear. The real you isn't afraid of everything. There are things that happen that made you afraid of everything. There are external factors that are going on around you that make you feel as though you have to fear everything, but that is not the real you. The real you isn't insecure. Because guess what? The real you has everything that it needs, and it's not afraid of pursuing the things that it wants and desires and needs. The real you has high character. And what I mean by that is, the real you isn't lying, cheating, stealing, doing all those things. Those are all things that were informed by the environment and the world in which you were born into. The real you isn't reacting to every stimulus, right? Now, here's a couple of things that you are going to need. The real you is going to need some stirring and some strengthening. So you're like writing out this list. And if you haven't started already, I want you to just, while we're on here, to just start writing out like, okay, this is what I've been pretending to be. And these are things that are really me. This is who I am when I'm around people that I trust, right? And just because this is the real you doesn't mean it's still the full picture. It needs some stirring, it needs some strengthening, okay? Stirring is the real you need someone to get in there to stir the pot and get you out of your comfort zone. Why? Most likely it's been hidden for so long that it has not received the same level of development as some of the other traits that you have previously been identifying as. Maybe you're like, I lack patience. No, you've learned to be impatient. So maybe you need someone to come in and stir the pot and teach you a little bit more of what it means to be patient and why you should and how you should allow that to flow, and if you've ever heard of what happens with eagles, right? And you have an eagle, they have this nest way, way, way up high. And what it starts doing is eventually stirring up that nest to make it smaller and smaller and smaller. So the baby eagles are starting off and they're all comfy in these huge nests. And next thing you know, the nest gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until there's no more room. They've outgrown it. And now they're forced to either fall to their death or fly. And guess what? Your actual identity, your spirit needs that to happen, okay? And some of these things will make sense out of some of the difficult experiences you've gone through. And the real you, which is going to support your destiny and your purpose, when you really start to think about it and get into it, will inform why you've gone through certain things. It can provide some meaning for your trauma. I went through this because what I'm supposed to do, my purpose on this earth is to do X, Y, Z. The real you needs a mentor. Someone who can speak to you and help you bring these qualities forth. Now, the cool thing is now we live in society where you can find mentors without it even having to be in person, and there's so many different mediums where you can go through mentorship, from courses to classes to live trainings like the one you're on now, to books, to, there's just so many different ways in which you can receive mentorship, whereas in past generations, they had to literally meet someone, to help them with this, right? And, this is important for you to go out and search for this, because representation really does matter. And the reason being is sometimes we don't go after and we don't chase the things that our true identity and our spirit is informing and telling us, because we don't see any examples around us. And there are examples, you just have to go out and search for them and seek the information. Another thing is the real you needs to be embraced and affirmed. It is not going to continue to grow if you reject it. And this is hard because, for instance, I know, I'll give an example. In my family, it is looked down upon to be sensitive. You know, people say, well, you're just sensitive. Why are you so sensitive about everything? And then really it's like, no, why are you so harsh? Me reacting to you being extremely harsh is not me being overly sensitive, right? But if you've had that constantly drilled in your head, and it might be for some men, being overly sensitive or having a sensitive soul was looked down upon, you might have been beat up or, verbally punished or whatever because of it. You have to really go through a process to where you literally say to yourself, this is okay. And not only do you say it, but you affirm it, you embrace it, and you stop rejecting that part of yourself, of your true identity, and take the time to address any negative paradigms that you may have, any negative thoughts, that are associated with that trait. The real you needs new responsibilities that foster that growth. No one grows in a state of idleness. And that is the portion and the way that you bring forth the characteristics that you have. For instance, for me, if I'm like, you know what, I know I have this gift for writing, especially like in the creative sense, screenplays, things like that. Guess what? I have to find ways to write every day. Who am I studying? Am I attending someone's master class? Things like that. Why? Because that is not going to grow if it's idle. And just because it is a part of me and a gift that I have, doesn't mean that it'll grow and it'll be a tool that I can use if I'm idle. This is really important. The real you, once you have stripped down all the other stuff, that's been a part of your identity, that's come from outsourced, I guess it has been outsourced, outside factors, what have you, right? You have to create new rules of engagement. Why? Because bad company corrupts good character. The real you may require you to find and develop new friendships. You may need new environments, AKA new watering holes. The people that you are around water you. And it's either watering some good seeds or watering some bad seeds. Or you can think of a watering hole where all the animals around and they're all drinking from there and they're talking around the water cooler and they're gossiping and they're doing this and they're saying this or whatever. Guess what? The new you may need a new watering hole. It may need some new boundaries. Changes in speech, changes in behavior, changes in activities. Maybe your old identity hung out in these types of places, right? And guess what? Where you're going, you can't even step foot in those places anymore, or you shouldn't be stepping foot in some of those places anymore. Why? Because it brings out and brings up your false self, your counterfeit self, okay? And really everything around you needs to be in support and needs to affirm and strengthen what it is that you are trying to achieve. And I'm a strong believer that everything that you want to achieve, you already have the natural inclination and the seeds inside of yourself, but those seeds cannot grow and cannot be fostered in specific environments. And a lot of times those environments are places from which we came from. And that could be yesterday, today, it could be your childhood, but still in the past. You need to, the new rule of engagement is you need to show yourself. No more hiding, meaning you are being authentic in your spaces, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's different from everyone else. And this is important because every company, every organization, every family, everything needs a disruptor. They need that person when everyone else says, we need to go this way. And someone says, I don't know, maybe we should try this way. That's how you break generational curses. That's how you build businesses. That's how you come up with new ideas for things. That's how you push past your limits and past your boundaries and what you all have previously achieved. Okay. And we've already talked about, you want to seek representation and mentorship. And so what I'm challenging you guys to do is to go out and live in the space of vulnerability where you allow your real self to shine. Why? Because no one can connect and no one does connect with falsehood. Now, I'm saying this to say everyone has different levels of vulnerability. That doesn't mean everyone should hold back. But what I mean by that is some people just have way more emotions to express than others. Like, I'll admit, I have emotions. I don't have as many as other people. And it was something that I used to like really look down on, like, am I a robot? Am I this or am I that? But when I look at my calling in life and how I support and coach and empower people and problem solve and strategize, in order for me to do that really well, my emotions can't be like this because everyone else is like this and they need someone that's going to be like this. Okay. Right? Someone can say something real crazy to me and I'm just like, okay, I understand. No problem. No judgment. And I have these things happen all the time. And part of the beauty in that is because I've embraced the fact of, look, sometimes emotionally, I ain't going to say I'm white bread, but I'm not Ezekiel. I'm just some good enriched wheat. Okay. And that's perfectly okay. Right. But the reason that you need vulnerability is vulnerability always informs artistry and creativity. And everything that you're trying to achieve is going to require some form of artistry, whether you're trying to become a business artist, a community artist, whether it's a financial artist, a philanthropic artist, a parental artist. And let me tell you, parenting requires some artistry. I don't care if you're a step parent, a side parent, adopted parent, whatever it is, it's going to require some form of artistry, right? But just keep that in mind. Whatever it is that you're trying to create, true art spawns from a place of vulnerability and truth, okay? And lastly, this is a process that is not going to be comfortable and it's going to hurt a little. But I promise you in the long run, it's not going to hurt as much as living a counterfeit life or operating in this world as your counterfeit self. So for instance, one area of sacrifice is going to be your true self, and the spirit of you is going to require you to give up what you like in exchange for what you love. So let's say the real you is like that boss chick or dude, and you're going to be an entrepreneur, or you're already an entrepreneur, you're going to kill it, you're going to do all this stuff, right? It may require you to give up staying up partying every night. Why? Because you got to be up and ready to go, ready to influence people, ready to motivate, ready to do all of those things. That may be something you may have to sacrifice. But guess what? That's something that you like, but being that boss and that girl or that guy is something that you love. Okay? It may require you to exchange being gossipy for collaboration and empowerment. And let's face it, why do I put that on there? Gossiping feels good. That's why people do it. It feels good. So-and-so's doing this, da-da-da-da. And we even use it as a way to connect, right? And it's really toxic because people love having a scapegoat, someone to blame things on, someone to say, this has happened because of you, right? But your true self may require you to give that up in order to be someone who is collaborative and empowers and all of those things, right? You may have to give up complaining for being proactive. This is extremely important because many of us are completely addicted to our complaints. The things that we've been complaining about. We've been complaining about them for so long. They've moved in the house. They already changed their address at the post office. They have just been with us for a very, very long time. Okay. So guess what? Your true self, you may have to give that up in order for you to be proactive. Maybe you've been saying, I'm stubborn, I'm stubborn, I'm stubborn. No, you're not stubborn. You picked up on stubbornness from a parent that refused to apologize. That's not who you really are, right? Now you're going from being stubborn to being extremely coachable, okay? And this is one way of knowing that something has been a counterfeit in your life, because the lines can get very, very blurry. Anything counterfeit will ask you to exchange what you love for what you like. Whereas I'm saying, look, you're going to need to give up what you like for the things that you love. You may really like your job, but you may have to go out there and take a risk to find the job that you love, that's closer to your purpose and what you're destined for. And something that's counterfeit will require you to give up what you love for what you like. You know, and that can be a counterfeit life. It could be a counterfeit love, something you thought you loved, but it's really not. It's just something you're used to. It could be a person, a place, anything. And some perfect examples of this is, you know, sometimes we watch people exchange their partner for a flame. That's a perfect example of exchanging something that you really love for something that you like in the moment. That's how you know it's counterfeit. It may ask you to exchange your career for a get-rich-quick scheme. That's how you know it's counterfeit, right? I mean, we can even go as deep as saying, you know, people using drugs. It may be something that they really like, but it's counterfeit because it's requiring them to exchange their family and their relationships and everything they built for something that they like. That's how you know it's a counterfeit love, okay? And I'm going to end this with saying, whatever that is, your true self will always support your vision. And if there is something about you that is getting in the way of what it is you're looking to achieve, that's how you know it's not a true part of your identity. Most likely it is something that you have taken in, something that you've embraced that worked for you during a certain time period or a specific place or environment that no longer serves you. And remember, your vision is always going to require some type of transformation. That means you may have to change locations. You may have to change portions of your identity. You may have to change environments. You may have to change everything, right? But you just have to trust and know that what you're changing and what you're transforming, everything that's waiting for you in that place is going to be much sweeter than where you're coming from, which is going to require a higher level of trust in yourself and faith in your abilities, and the fact that things for you are always getting better, even through suffering, even through challenges, even through all of those different things. So I hope this has helped you. And my true question for all of you is, who are you? And I hope that the answer to that question will be whomever my destiny is requiring and calling me to be. And so if you're online and you're watching this live, I would recommend that you take out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down everything, you know, that you're feeling, you know, all the different traits that you can think of, that may be a part of your personal identity or has been a part of your personal identity that's holding you back from where you need to go. And then on that other side, I want you to write out your true self. Now that list may be 2 things, but eventually it'll grow and it'll just fill that paper, and maybe by the time you're, 100 years old and it's your time to leave, you'll have this super long piece of paper saying, look, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I've left, a mark on this world. And so thank you guys so much for being on. I'm going to end the call for everyone that is streaming online. And if you're with me on Zoom, please hold and wait for just a second.